Oh hey, I'm Michael Keane. I watch movies and stuff. June was a weird month for me as I spent a large chunk of my time finishing up the necessary junk for the release of my movie Dr. Deathface later this year. However, I did find time to watch over 30 movies in that time because I'm a crazy person, so let's dig into all the films I watched in June of 2025. I began the month with the French film Peppermint Soda, the directorial debut of Diane Curis. And what a debut it is! This thing is like watching a 70s feminist delve through snapshots of 1963, which is essentially what Curis does here. She showcases what it was like to be a 13-year-old girl going through the good times and the bad, and how adolescence can be both troublesome and celebratory. I think my favorite aspect was watching the girls dealing with the prospect of adulthood and showing their ignorance in the process. It's a very honest look at the intersection of child and adulthood, and one I definitely recommend people check out. Now here's your lukewarm take for the day. I think PeeWees Big Adventure is just okay. It turns out I never watched this one beginning to end, having just picked up pieces on TV throughout my life. I knew the plot, I knew the Large Marge moment and little details like the dinosaur sculpture and the visit to the Alamo, but I never had them all bound together under one 90-minute viewing experience. It was a weird revelation for me, as I do enjoy Pee-wee's Playhouse, but for whatever reason, this version presented in the movie mostly just comes off as kinda irritating. It's not a bad film at all, but not one I'm terribly interested in revisiting.
See you later, sucker.
Then I watched the 1999 version of The Mummy for the sake of a Screen Rant video.
We are in very serious trouble.
This one's aged pretty nicely into a classical Hollywood adventure flick. It helps that it's set in the 1920s, of course, but just to see a well-lit blockbuster with tons of production design, shot on film, that's the good shit, man. The CGI is a bit dodgy, but then so are old Hollywood backdrops and bats on strings, so whatever. What struck me this time around is that this thing is beautifully shot for the most part. DP Adrian Biddle doesn't reinvent the wheel or anything, but he's a big help in crafting that classical feel. It is interesting to look at The Mummy from the bisexual perspective. I've heard a lot over the years about this being a big awakening point for a lot of bisexual people, and I guess I can see why. There's lots of bare-chested men with strong jawlines, Rachel Weisz is a cute bespectacled nerd, and even the comedy relief brother is suitably bangable. Even these gold guard dudes are laying out the necessary cake. Not everyone is hot though. Benny, for example, or the greedy warden guy, or okay, I guess that's about it. Barring that perspective though, it's still a fun little adventure flick. I followed The Mummy up with the sequel, The Mummy Returns, which I hadn't seen since theaters back in 2001. So as you can imagine, it was a pretty fresh experience. I don't know about this one, fellas. Plot-wise, it's a lot more muddled than the previous film, and unfortunately saddled with the addition of a child actor and more dodgy CGI. That said, we're still in an era where practical production design was necessary, so we do get some cool sets, and yeah, I'm gonna be honest, this was incredibly boring. There's just too much going on, and not enough of it makes enough sense to be captivating. I think with better CGI, it'd be more tolerable, but woof, we're talking some serious PS2 cutscene technology here. I think the OG gets by on a mix of narrative simplicity and a hefty dose of campy action adventure. The Mummy Returns doesn't even come close to the former, while the latter is spoiled by an over-reliance on computer enhancement in an era when it just wasn't up to snuff. Then there's the awkwardly titled From the World of John Wick, Ballerina, which I had a pretty decent time with. It's dumber than a sack of rocks, but then I don't go to see the John Wick franchise for its strong logic. I appreciated the Hot Fuzz style twist about halfway through, and there's a literal firefight that must hold some kind of record for most on-screen bodies on fire. Some of this sequence looked like it had to really push the boundaries of what's safe on set, and I appreciated that level of stunt work and dedication to the art. I followed that up with The Mummy, Tomb of the Dragon Emperor, which I missed in theaters, and well, that was probably for the best. It's a nothing burger of a blockbuster with some impressive production design in the Shanghai sequences, where most of the best work is done. There's a car chase, for example, that suggests we could be in for some really fun adventure, but as soon as that's done and we make our way into the ruins of wherever the fuck, it just falls apart.
I'm just trying to...
Part of that lies in the fact that an army of stone dudes led by a fire-breathing stone dude just isn't as enthralling as Egyptian mummy shenanigans. Michelle Yeoh, bless her, does elevate the scenes that she's in, but even her impeccable skills can't keep this thing interesting. Oof, oh god, and the Yetis. Oh, the Yetis. It's all just, it's too dumb for its own good. But at least Brendan Fraser's still sort of charming? And actually, small hot take, Hollywood shouldn't try and do ancient Asian culture. It just always winds up so boring. It's not even that it's bad, it's just so boring. I don't know what it is about Hollywood and Asian stuff, but woof.
Now you can rule. In hell.
Next up, it's back to 1977 with the Mexican nunsploitation horror flick Alukarta. Alukarta is a weird young orphan broad who collects rocks and bugs, is obsessed with death, and lives in a convent. She meets new girl Justine, and the two immediately become friends. That's your plot, and let me tell you, it's more than enough to satisfy your bloodthirsty tastes, you little freak.
The enemy of virtue. The perpetual persecutor of innocence. The arch-enemy of Almighty God. You mean the devil?
There's a lot of style to this one, though it's not readily apparent at first. Initially, it all seems a bit stagey and overly theatrical, with the only calling card toward what's to come being the white habits worn by the nuns, which appear to be stained with blood, suggesting menstruation. Soon enough, the production design, paired with a profound bloodlust, guides us into a satanic lesbian smorgasbord of death and madness. Shit gets wild. And I don't have any way to work this into my review, but there's a great 360 shot during a priest's big speech that's just the bee's knees. I love this movie, and I look forward to talking about it some more in the 1977 video that I'm working on. If you haven't seen Alukarta, check out Alukarta. It has this cool poster that you've definitely seen before. Then I rewatched Paul Verhoeven's Speders, which I knocked half a star off for on account of the ramifications of a pretty gruesome gang rape. Beyond that one little faux pas, though, I really have no problems with this movie. It's a coming-of-age tale like only Paul Verhoeven can bring to you, complete with plenty of tits and dongs and bad people mostly winding up in bad situations. This is still in Verhoeven's early Dutch period, though he was, of course, coming off the massive success of both Turkish Delight and Soldier of Orange. My big takeaway on this viewing is that, much like his other films, Verhoeven shows an intense love of extras. They're everywhere in this flick. The man loves a crowd scene. He also knows how to liven up just about any scene through small adjustments. Just look at this revival tent swaying in the wind, or a character strutting into a bar while soaking wet. Verhoeven is a master of dynamic scene work, and that's on full display in Speders. Then I went to the local Cineplex to watch Friendship before it left theaters for good, and I'm glad I did. As a big fan of cringe comedy, I ate well that day. Friendship is the story of a loser played by Tim Robinson with a good-paying job, living in the suburbs with his wife and son. When a new neighbor played by Paul Rudd moves in, Robinson becomes obsessed with how cool he is. Things proceed to get delightfully uncomfortable as Robinson's life unwinds and things get increasingly out of control, often with both hilarious and off-putting results.
People are saying it's actually nuts. It's driving people crazy.
And I love that Tim Robinson's job in the movie is to make apps that hook people. He's just like, he's got the scummiest job you could possibly think of. Friendship's really good. Continuing with my Verhoeven watch-through, I took a gander at his 1981 TV movie All Things Pass, which I was sort of dreading despite its hour-long runtime. For whatever reason, I had it in my head that it would be a pretty maudlin World War II drama, and while it was certainly filled with melancholy, it wasn't what I was expecting. Instead, it's a contemporary story about a 60-year-old dude named Ob who was part of a resistance movement during the war. He winds up just so happening to see the heavily aged Nazi bastard whom he and his fellow resistance fighters vowed to kill, and off he goes to recruit those former soldiers to help him enact his vengeance. What he finds is that time can change how we perceive the world around us, and indeed, that all things pass. It fucks pretty hard. I followed that up with Robert Altman's Three Women, the riveting story of what happens when two autistic women become roommates. This is a wild picture, one that starts off as a dark cringe comedy, but which morphs slowly, albeit from the very outset, into a subtle sort of horror film. Sure, it's labeled as a psychological drama, but Altman ain't fooling me. While 1972's Images might be his one out-and-out horror film, Three Women might as well be labeled as such too. Sissy Spacek is absolutely terrifying at times. This is while also displaying a sweetness that makes it easy to see how she's able to slip into the life of Shelley Duvall's egotistical health spa worker. Duvall, by the way, is absolutely phenomenal. She's both irritating and lovable, and watching her alienate those around her is a cringe-filled joy. You can definitely tell that this was a movie inspired by a dream, as Robert Altman winds up spending a lot of runtime on ethereal cinematography and long, drawn-out sequences in his attempts to engage with themes of identity and aging. Not a complaint, by the way. I was more than happy going along for the ride. For that 1977 video that I'm working on, I had planned on just watching what I hadn't seen previously, but when it came to William Friedkin's Sorcerer, well, I couldn't help but watch the whole thing. It's just a wall-to-wall masterpiece of tension about four men contending with fate itself in an unnamed South American country. I'll wax poetic about it more in that 77 video, so I'll skip to the point. Sorcerer rules, and it remains my favorite film of that year. I continued my trip through 1977 with The Ascent, the Soviet World War II picture about a couple of soldiers who go out to scrounge up supplies for their group of scrappy anti-German partisans. These guys go through hell and wind up captured by the Germans, who proceed to test their loyalty to the cause. These events are set in a white hellscape of snow, snow, and more snow. It's an at times nightmarish descent into madness, but one with plenty of careful restraint, courtesy of director Larissa Shepitko, who sadly died just 2 years later in a tragic car accident. Her work here suggests a remarkable career cut far too short. But enough sad shit, let's talk Slapshot, yet another 77 flick. This one is a dark comedy about hockey, and through hockey a look at masculinity and industrial hardship. Slapshot stars Paul Newman in one of his most outwardly entertaining roles, which is really saying something since it's Paul fucking Newman. He leads a fun, foul-mouthed cast of ne'er-do-wells, including Twin Peaks' very own Michael Ontkeen, as the lone player not interested in the goon tactics employed by his teammates, who resort to copious fighting in lieu of classic hockey in order to rile up the fans and rocket the team to success. Perhaps the best part of Slapshot is the 2 minutes wherein the three Hanson brothers are set loose on an opposing team. It's one of the greatest montages in sports movie history. If you've never seen Slapshot, definitely give it a shot. I followed that insanity up with Opening Night, the John Cassavetes drama about an aging actress working through previews of her new Broadway play. Like Three Women, Opening Night evolves into essentially a horror film, although without that film's more overt artistry. Instead, Cassavetes keeps things pretty restrained, to the point that it's almost hard to tell what's real and what's fantasy. His docudrama approach is perhaps a little rough at times when paired with Opening Night's 2.5-hour runtime, which definitely feels its length, but that doesn't stop it from being a new favorite of mine. Highly recommend. Then I ditched a 1977 in favor of 1973 with Terminal Island, which I already did a video on. I guess what I'd like to add is that I really can't reiterate enough how much I love the intro exposition. I suppose it's kind of clunky, but it's just so wonderfully straightforward while also introducing the viewer to the satirical nature of what's about to go down. It tells you instantly that you're in for a bit of a joke, or at least a slice of entertainment not to be taken too seriously. Continuing last month's journey through Stephen King's bibliography, I finished reading Misery, and so I watched, well, Misery. I purposefully avoided it all these years, and now having seen it, yeah, Rob Reiner did a pretty solid job adapting the book for the big screen. There are plenty of changes, most of which make sense given the need to pack everything into a reasonable runtime, with the biggest change coming in the form of Richard Farnsworth's laid-back country sheriff, who finds himself low-key obsessed with finding missing writer Paul Sheldon. Where in the book we don't get much of any idea of what's happening outside of Annie Wilkes' property, in the movie we get a ton of detail, including a small role for Lauren Bacall as Paul's agent. Of course, the big selling point of Misery is Kathy Bates as Annie Wilkes, and go figure, 35 years later, she still delivers in spades.
Here. In case you think of any ideas.
While I had some qualms about some minor cock-a-doodle changes, including the fate of Misery's return, they were all made moot thanks to her incredible performance. Then I watched Paul Verhoeven's The Fourth Man, which I think I need to rewatch. It's a bisexual erotic thriller with art film aspirations, something that should be right up my alley. and I did enjoy it, don't get me wrong, but that enjoyment was stymied somewhat by what I felt was a sort of lackluster conclusion. I think I just expected more from the thriller element, which seems to me like it starts super late and ends before it can really get going. Yeah, I'll definitely revisit this one, especially because it just feels like I didn't take it in properly. So, yeah, I don't really have much thoughts on this movie. It was good, just not as good as I thought it would be. I decided to do a double feature then with Verhoeven's Flesh and Blood, his last film before making the jump to American motion pictures. This is a wild one, his first film in English, starring Rutger Hauer, Jennifer Jason Leigh, Jack Thompson, Brian James, and freaking Susan Tyrrell. It's a stacked cast playing medieval fantasy in a grungy world that might honestly be the nastiest setting I've ever seen. It's just a dirty movie wherein everything is made to feel grimy to the point that you can feel the bubonic plague before it even makes an appearance. Basically, it's about a group of mercenaries led by Hauer's Martin who inadvertently kidnap an Italian prince's betrothed. They hole up in a poorly protected castle, and the world's least appealing love story ensues. That's oversimplifying it, though. There's a lot happening in this flick to the point that it feels weighed down by a proliferance of plot. That said, it's a wild picture, and one wherein Verhoeven gets to go hog wild with his complete disinterest in a relatable hero figure. Perhaps my favorite moment is when the prince and Jennifer Jason Leigh fall in love under two hanged bodies. There's lots of grody imagery like that, and it's a delight, albeit a very flawed one. Yashiki is a uniquely Japanese take on the superhero movie. It features a salaryman and a student both getting cybernetic powers after an alien encounter, which results in the two of them taking opposite approaches to their newfound abilities. It takes a little while to get to the more what the fuck element of its premise, but boy howdy, once things start going off the wall, they stay that way. That's not always great necessarily. I thought the finger gun through screens thing was a bit whack and got real old real quick. However, the action sequences late in the film are a lot of fun even when the CGI starts getting a bit dodgy, and I appreciated how dark those scenes could get. Like when this news helicopter gets involved and the reporter is just yeeted out of the damn thing. The body count in this is wild, though again a lot of those deaths are thanks to that silly finger gun concept, which, you know, it's no Yu Yu Hakusho, let me just put it that way. Overall, an enjoyable little superhero movie, albeit one that didn't go quite as crazy as I'd hoped. By the by, if you really want me to watch a movie you recommend, just let me know in the comments on this video. I had a few suggestions in my May videos comments, and among them was the 1976 Nikatsu Roman porno, Watcher in the Attic. And well, I watched it. The brevity of the opening is something else. Here's a chick getting eaten out by a clown. There's a dude who watches from the attic. Boom, title. That's economical storytelling. Right off the bat, you get the promise of the title and a general idea of what to expect from the rest of the film. Dude watching weird sex shit. Let's go. Now, there is more to the plot than that. Homeboy witnesses a murder, falls in love with the killer, and plenty of sexual hijinks punctuate those story beats over the course of a respectable hour-long runtime. The film is visually really pleasing, as is to be expected from a Nikatsu Roman porno. If you haven't watched one before, they're all gorgeous, pretty much. It's just nature of the game. Sometimes the setting can be a bit plain looking, but the shot composition and lighting are so on point that it doesn't matter. Plus, there's usually something sexual or bizarrely sexual going on, so you definitely get what you pay for. Anyway, I continued my Verhoeven journey with my 10 millionth rewatch of Robocop. There's not too much I have to say here that won't be included in my Verhoeven video, but suffice it to say that I was once again convinced that this is the greatest film ever fucking made.
Bitches leave.
Really, the only thing it doesn't have is copious amounts of sex. Beyond the locker room scene and the use of two coked out hookers during Bob Morton's exit, this is a pretty chaste flick, at least for Verhoeven. However, he makes up for it by putting more squibs on a human body than science was prepared for. Oh, and don't even get me started on all the extras. Ugh. Dude loves to fill the screen. Look at this fucking boardroom. You don't need that many people in a boardroom. It's insane. Or look at how chock full of people the police station is. Dude loves extras. I followed that up with Total Recall, in which Verhoeven once again eschewed sex in favor of violence, although he does try and make up for that with the three-titted mutant broad. Rob Bottin does incredible work here. I love the makeup effects in Robocop, but this is just a whole other planet of expert craftsmanship. The fake heads alone belong in a museum. As for extras, Boy howdy, just watch this great blood-soaked chase scene in which Michael Ironside's goons attempt to capture Arnold Schwarzenegger. Ooh, or just take a gander at literally any scene on Mars. That place is packed. Now you'll be shocked to find out I followed up Total Recall with a rewatch of Basic Instinct, in which Verhoeven finally adds the sex back into his filmmaking lexicon for the first time since arriving in Hollywood. And no, Flesh and Blood doesn't count. That was a European production. Okay, back off. Basic Instinct is first and foremost an erotic thriller, following a detective played by Michael Douglas, who's swiftly seduced by murder suspect and successful author Catherine Trammell, played by Sharon Stone. Joining them are George Zunza as inexplicably Texas-coded partner detective guy, Jean Triplehorn as sexy therapist, and Sharon Stone's tits as themselves. As far as extras go, just take a look at this crime scene. How many detectives are enough for you, Paul? Then I went to another fan suggestion from the comments, 1960s Robert Mitchum vehicle Home from the Hill, a colorful melodrama set in a little Texas town wherein Mitchum's manly man landowner decides that it's high time he teaches his son, played by George Hamilton, all about what it means to be a real man, in between all the womanizing, anyway. Home from the Hill is definitely a winner for me. It's got shades of Douglas Sirk, which instantly endears me to pretty much anything, and the performances from Mitchum and Hamilton are pretty off the charts. They're joined by Mitchum's protege, played by George Peppard, or Peppard? I've never said his name out loud before, who absolutely steals the show anytime he's on screen. I know Peppard, or Peppard, or whatever the fuck, was a pretty big name in his time, but honestly, he should be much more recognized based purely on this role. Director Vincente Minnelli and cinematographer Milton Krasner, along with writing duo Irving Ravitch and Harriet Frank Jr., put together a truly beautiful indictment of toxic masculinity that really should be seen by everyone. I'm legitimately surprised I'd never heard of this before being told about it. Like, check it out.
Not exactly rest in peace, and not exactly heaven is your home.
I followed that up with the 1977 neo-noir The Late Show, starring Art Carney as an aging private eye who's tasked with helping Lily Tomlin's Margot find her stolen cat after the somehow related murder of an old colleague. It's a bit convoluted, but it's an interesting curio from a bygone era, and notably was nominated for Best Original Screenplay at that year's Academy Awards, which it lost to Annie Hall.
I mean, if you only knew how far behind I've gotten and everything, just because of all this ridiculous, and I don't even have my cat yet. I don't want to even talk about it because I am finished. I mean, I am finished. Finalissimo.
Now this video is getting a little long in the tooth, so let's cycle through the rest of these nice and quickly. I also watched This Is the Tom Green documentary, which was a nice little summation of Tom Green's shockingly consistent career. Turns out the dude's just been a genius who was ahead of his time since, like, the very beginning. Of course, that sentiment could be a direct result of Tom Green having directed his own documentary, but, it was fun. I double featured that doc with the Paul Verhoeven classic Showgirls. What is there to say about this one? Well, like with previous Verhoeven flicks, you'll be shocked to find out I was very aware of his use of extras, which are once again at a surplus. Dude loves to fill the screen with people. This thing is full of parties, clubs, and massive musical numbers. Just look at this shot, complete with a metric shit ton of censorship, in which Nomi performs a lap dance. Verhoeven couldn't help himself, so of course it takes place next to two massive windows overlooking the busy strip club just outside. Basically, anytime he can add more people to a shot, he does so. The man's a godsend to casting offices everywhere. I love it. Also, the movie fucking rules. I continued my dive through show business with 1992's Robert Altman flick, The Player. I think because Altman also produced The Late Show, so he was fresh in my mind. I wasn't as enamored by The Player as a lot of folks seem to be, but it's still a really strong film from one of America's most enduring auteurs. It follows a Hollywood exec who, at a point where his career looks to be going down the drain, finds himself being hounded by an anonymous writer whom he scorned at some point in the past. This leads our intrepid sort of hero, played by Tim Robbins, to accidentally murder an unrelated screenwriter, and thus our plot begins, as he tries to save his career and his life.
No Hollywood ending.
No Hollywood ending.
The whole thing's a pretty damning indictment of the Hollywood system, while also serving up more cameos that you can shake a Burt Reynolds at. Then for my weekly movie group, we watched Sometimes Aunt Martha Does Dreadful Things, a Florida-shot indie with some strong homosexual overtones, about a pair of criminals hiding out from the law, one of whom does so in drag.
Do you think I like wearing this bird's nest?
It's a tale of crime, obsession, and cross-dressing that could only be filmed in the Sunshine State. It's also kinda just fine. I don't know, the back of the Blu-ray promises a mix of John Waters and the Brady Bunch, and I just don't see it. Aunt Martha is a fun little jaunt into that distinctly trashy regional indie scene of the late 60s and early 70s, something you could imagine being directed by Herschel Gordon Lewis. However, it's nowhere near the level of his best work. But hey, I was stoned as all get out while watching this sucker, so feel free to tell me in the comments why it's the second coming of Christ, or whatever. Then I watched Jurassic World Dominion, a film about clones, super locusts, and yes, dinosaurs. It kinda sucked. Moving on. The latest venture from Pixar, Ilio, is a charming if somewhat forgettable story of an orphaned boy living with his aunt. He dreams of being abducted by aliens, and sure enough, he gets his wish, only to be thrust into a plot to save the Communiverse, a hive of hyper-intelligent aliens who inexplicably don't immediately realize that the literal child isn't in fact the leader of Earth. Along the way, Elio meets Glorden, the slug-like son of an interplanetary warlord, and the two form a beautiful friendship. My son liked it, so it's okay by me. And finally, I finished off June with a viewing of Dr. Deathface, for which I recorded a commentary for the upcoming Blu-ray release. Much like any creative who's had to watch through their work a billion times, I'm pretty over it, but I'm excited to see what others think when it's released. Stay tuned for more news on that front.
You had it in you all along. Let me get something to wipe off your face.
And that's it. Every movie I watched in June of 2025. Let me know in the comments what I should watch next and what deep dives you'd like to see on this channel. Until next time, go watch a movie.
It's gonna take me some time to give you all that is mine.